My name is Erica Lorraine Spencer, and I remain subject to state surveillance and terrorism by the state of California that is operating a malicious targeting system, which is referred to as federal group stalking and monitoring via communication devices. And it is in violation of federal stalking statute 18 U.S.C. sections 2261A subsections 1 and 2. My website and podcast serve the public good by publishing evidence of the public entity's ceaseless engagement in a pattern of conduct intended to stalk and monitor via communication devices, surveil, harass, and terrorize an American citizen in concert with the people of the state of California. Documentation serves the lawful purposes of wide exposure, federal prosecution, and influencing federal legislation with policies specifically designed to punish, dismantle, and disincentivize an unprecedented targeting system by a public entity that acts in concert with the people of the state in order to criminally place under surveillance and terrorize an American citizen, which is a matter of public corruption in the state of California. All right, it is currently April 15th. It's Tuesday, 2025. It is Tuesday, April 15th, 2025. This is documentation regarding what is domestic terrorism and psychological torture. And the psychological torture feature regarding federal group stalking and monitoring, which is a demonic, satanic system of targeting by a government. And the government is understood, it's a term of art with regard to gang stalking. The civilian population is the government that is vicariously acting on behalf of that public entity that is using that population to maintain what are elements of monitoring, which are criminal. The government has no warrant or probable cause to keep any American citizen under surveillance, and also not able to do so or not empowered to do so demonically. All right. And so this is what the entity is doing while it is engaging in the pattern of conduct. And this is what Jason Isaac Fields, this is somebody that is, again, abusing a position in law enforcement and is monitoring this evidence right now while a defendant enters the apartment. This is why Jason Isaac Fields will be removed from the position that he currently holds. He is engaged in the pattern of conduct, like I documented on video today, at what is 4:57 p.m. and ending at 5:07 p.m., where the entity is engaged in this pattern of conduct as I'm documenting this obsessed, demon-possessed gang stalker who has abused his position in government, where the government has no, in the first instance, any lawful authority to engage in the inhumane experiment in the life of an American citizen in the United States, engaging in gang stalking. And so this is what Jason Isaac Fields is engaging in to date. Currently, right now, he is engaged in unlawful monitoring of evidence against him, against the law enforcement agency where he abused his position, enabling, as I go through city to city and county to county and have documented the pattern of conduct, the federal government is under no circumstances under any sort of constitutionally authorized position to enable any police department, any sheriff's department, any civilian population, any municipality, in other words, like it is, to engage in the pattern of conduct. And there is no legitimate investigation underway by an entity that's merely stalking American citizens using planes and helicopters. There is no legitimate investigation underway. This is literally getting through the superficial means whereby domestic terrorism is underway and facilitated in the U.S. by the U.S. government that relies on the states to execute it. All right. It is the U.S. government's pattern of conduct, and terrorists like Jason Isaac Fields, who are violent sex offenders, engaged in what is years and years of summoning demonic spirits, which is why, speaking to his mental illness, this ongoing obsession with me remains, while a delusion regarding any future endeavors, the only future that he has will be in federal prison if this terrorist ever comes into my physical presence. This person is still representing a threat. I am still being gang stalked. His criminal conduct while abusing his government position, the ongoing fruits of that remains to date, which is also why he remains a terrorist. He is still facilitating it. The entity is still gang stalking me while I document him, which is the same exact pattern of conduct. This is why he is losing his job and future in any law enforcement, and he is still engaging in what is that psychological warfare, which is demonic, with his wife that is gang stalking and exhibiting severe mental instability. You need to understand it is shared with Jason Isaac Fields, engaging in the same exact sex rituals, engaging in the same exact worship of Satan, engaging in the same exact satanic spiritual attacks, while seeking to, again, under the delusion that this person was ever going to siphon my spiritual gifts, if you will, and then be some sort of successful psychic investigator. This person is mentally ill. This person is sexually perverted. This person is obsessed, and it is based on his witchcraft practices, which continue. And it is unlawful, and it is that which is going to be recognized with regard to the prosecution of that entity that is still engaged in federal group stalking and monitoring, including, as you hear in the background. So this is activity creation. Nonetheless, I want to speak to what the entity has been engaged in for years. Jason Isaac Fields is, again, the birth date is January 10th. He is at or around the same age of Eric Spencer, so this is probably 1985. Nonetheless, this is somebody that was formerly in my peer circle and is a hitman, has been in that position with regard to gang stalking me with the state, and in a position with the government, engaging in egregious acts of criminal defamation, which is entirely malicious by a government actor engaging in domestic terrorism, doing so with his co-defendant, the one who you have heard heavily documented inside of this apartment, is still acting in concert with that same defendant to date, and the entity is delusional. That's what Jason Isaac Fields represents, the entity. The entity that's gang stalking at Woodside, this is the entity. So when I'm using such terms, the entity is delusional with regard to any sort of lawful means whereby it would be anything less than a kidnapping, and anything less than ongoing domestic terrorism that the government has no authority under the law to engage in, and that is terrorists like Jason Isaac Fields ever coming into my physical presence. This is somebody that is, again, very mentally disturbed, does need literally professional help while engaging with a psychological warfare and is still gang stalking. This is somebody that is under no circumstances ever going to be permitted, and this is what I'm documenting while I remain subject to what is an ongoing, albeit unsuccessful, campaign of spiritual attacks by demons like the ones who you hear, creating audible activity, speaking to their mental illness when they call someone else mentally ill. That's a demon-possessed gang stalker who is practicing witchcraft, and their audible activity is accomplishing monitoring, which Jason Isaac Fields is criminally engaging with, and also sharing in that ongoing psychological warfare. I want to be clear. Let me be clear. The P.O.C., the evidence proving that the government is engaged in gang stalking, is the evidence also relevant to proving psychological warfare, which is spiritual attacks. It is under all circumstances going to be referred to and recognized as the malicious, i.e. spiritual, meaning invisible, government that's targeting you in ways in which you're never supposed to be able to prove. It is the malicious and the inhumane acts of terrorism by the government. That, again, government actors like Jason Isaac Fields, not only is he done with regard to law enforcement, this person is going to be prosecuted with on the basis of all the means whereby this hitman has been facilitating this state system against me for years, and has done so also in the state of Nevada while I was being gang stalked in that state while he was a resident in that state. He then relocated to California, and he still remains a part of that pattern of conduct and has literally benefited in his career, where he's using that career in law enforcement to engage in domestic terrorism. Okay, from the outset, it is unlawful. All right, so I want to make sure that that is clear, and this is what I want to speak to. There are federal orders, and I will seek to enforce my rights, acquiring federal orders that would create restraints against Jason Isaac Fields, who remains a threat to me, my life, my safety, and my overall well-being. One that is resorting to ongoing psychological warfare. This is, in other words, somebody that is still gang stalking with the state, facilitating ongoing gang stalking with the state, with psychopaths who share his same mental illness. He's not distinct and separate with regard to this demon possession, which is inspiring actual mental illness of a psychopathic nature, especially while he's still engaging what is obsessively monitoring, spiritually attacking, that is, while I remain subject to that pattern of conduct. And it doesn't change based on any sort of evidence that would be created or provided by anybody, any third-party gang stalker, any state actor. If they're providing any sort of evidence in order to protect themselves, which that's the only reason why the entity is doing that, and with regard to prosecuting that entity, it's not removing the ongoing threat that the targeted individual remains subject to. And that's common sense. Okay, when you have conspired to target someone and you then are engaging what that ongoing conspiracy persists, regardless of whether you are providing any sort of testimony or evidence in order to aid in a prosecution, you do not cease to be a part of that ongoing threat, especially in the eyes and in the existence, the reality of the one who remains subject to it. And you will not unilaterally make yourself some sort of distinction and have any sort of rights under the law. You will be federally prosecuted, period. And this is evidence speaking to, again, federal orders requiring the restraint of terrorists like Jason Isaac Fields who remain a threat. And that threat is evident through the documentation as I remain subject to the P.O.C. This is not only a restraint to remain away from me, and also speaking to, again, the necessity for such devices under federal law where federal group stalking monitoring is underway. Okay, Fields is a documented gang stalker. This is further support of it. A domestic terrorist engaged in psychological warfare, which is intrinsic to this domestic terrorism. He is a corrupt government official abusing his position in law enforcement, and regardless of somebody claiming that they were deceived by some demon-possessed tarot card reader or whatever spirit that that is absolutely legally irrelevant. And the entity that's engaging in terrorizing an American citizen, understand what it is that I'm exposing, the context that it is demonic, the context that it is a satanic system of targeting, is context regarding the color, how you color the crime, where the government remains the stalker, where the government remains the terrorist. The fact that it's satanic is only enhancing what is the harms that the American citizen will recover for. And it's also relevant to the necessity of diagnosing actual mental illness by those participating in that criminal crime committed by a government. Okay? But you do not have any legally relevant, or actually no person that's subject to domestic terrorism cares about somebody stating, oh, well, I was deceived by some tarot card reader, because you have some high lofty ideas about being a psychic investigator, and you thought that you could siphon somebody's spiritual gifts, and so you spiritually attack them and gang stalk them. All right, this is, again, somebody that is entirely incompetent. This is Jason Isaac Fields, who was still engaging in spiritual warfare. While I remain subject to gang stalking, there is no ongoing investigation. That is legitimate. That is anything other than the same P.O.C. Period. What I am speaking to are all of those who will be held accountable under the law, all of those who will be removed from any positions that they use to execute this criminal conduct against me, defame my character, accomplish any sort of kidnapping, any sort of harms that I suffered, physical, mental, with regard to psychological warfare, the entity that's not capable to accomplish what is the purpose of trying to drive someone insane. That doesn't mean that I am not still entitled to recovery based on the intent, the ongoing effort to do so. Okay, it's going to take somebody to be able to resist it and contend against it in order to prove it and expose it. That doesn't mean that I'm entitled to any less justice, because these demons are spiritually inferior and intellectually inferior. That doesn't mean I'm entitled to any less justice because I'm advocating on behalf of the ordinary target individual that does not have that successful end. Okay, so I want to make sure that that's clear. And terrorists like Jason Isaac Fields are in a position where their mental illness is becoming more and more manifest. This is somebody that is speaking to delusion regarding, and by speaking to, I mean behaving in a manner while psychologically engaging in warfare, while I'm still being gang stalked. So this is harms that the government is increasingly engaging in, exacerbating the harms that the government is engaging in, while demons who are delusional that have no, you've been engaged in sexual activity with my relatives, you've been engaged in sexual. This is just speaking to how unattractive, how disgusting, and how delusional this mentally ill person is, Jason Isaac Fields. But actually, also, this is a domestic terrorist who tried to kill me, who's engaged in targeting me, and actually has no rational basis to even think that someone would voluntarily deal with them again. Even if somebody comes from a historical background of being inclined toward abusive relationships, if someone says no, it's not a challenge to try to force them to say yes. You will under no circumstances ever achieve a successful, voluntary, reciprocated relationship that is healthy, and it is outside of the violation of someone else's rights when you are starting with force. So we can analogize with something that you can perhaps understand and appreciate. When you are raping someone and you are engaging in what is violating their body without their consent, you do not then persist in continuously raping that person and thinking that your continuous rape of their body, of their temple, is going to result in them recognizing, oh, you're right, I do love you. And because you kept raping me against my will, now I recognize the fact that You're right. I do love you. And we shall go into marriage and a loving, voluntary, reciprocal relationship. This is a delusional psychopath. And spiritually attacking me is an ongoing, to be recognized and appreciated with regard to any egregious violation of my person. I have not consented to it. This person is obsessed based on the demonic spirits that he summoned on his own. And it will not result in anything other than a federal prosecution were this domestic terrorist ever to come into my presence. Any control of property that I own, any benefits that he has derived, not only is that going to be handed back over, but this is what is going to be the basis of prosecuting the government. This person is done with law enforcement, and this person is also very much in need and professional help based on, again, doors that he opened when he first sought to engage in entertaining demonic spirits, practicing witchcraft, targeting an innocent person. Okay, in doing so through the practice of Satanism. Key aspects to psychological warfare tactics that Fields, who remains engaged in witchcraft and is spiritually attacking me obsessively, in doing so against my will and consent in a manner that shall be appreciated under federal group stalking, upon federal group stalking and monitoring by the entity, who is utilizing Satanism and witchcraft to attack another, as Fields continues to do, which is not distinct or different from physically forcing oneself onto another without their consent, repeatedly. Okay? Fields is obsessed with forcing himself onto me spiritually. This is psychologically, and doing so in a manner that is harmful, involuntary, and demented. Okay, Fields is a predator. Jason Isaac Fields is a predator and a pervert who engages in what is psychologically targeting me, engaging in spiritual attacks regarding what it is while I'm subject to surveillance and commentary about my nude body, sexual comments about my figure while I'm subject to what is gang stalking, while he is spiritually attacking me, abusive comments getting at what is a means of trying to force and coerce my involvement with him while I'm subject to gang stalking, while he is spiritually attacking me. The series of delusional ideas which do not belong to me. This is somebody that's spiritually attacking me and seeking to inject the notion of romance, any sort of sexual attraction that would never be mutual between myself and he. And there is no connection that exists when you are monitoring someone like demons do, when you are gang stalking me like demons do. And by the way, when you have a sexual activity with everybody that I've known, including my relatives, this is somebody that is delusional. Okay, and is still engaging in this delusional behavior and spiritually attacking me. And the proof of federal group stalking monitoring is relevant to what this demon is doing in the spirit. Okay, and is doing it against my will. Witchcraft is real, and regardless of the fact that it is unsuccessful, this person is not changing my mind. This person is solidifying and cementing their documentation with regard to requiring federal prison if this terrorist ever comes into my presence, which I will dutifully, as I have been, document in order to prosecute to the fullest extent of the law, like any other terrorist. It is, again, an assumption that this state actor will not be subject to federal prison at the outset, because providing any evidence against the entity is not providing any sort of relief from federal prison at all. Okay, so this psychological torture, this psychological acts of tormenting is relevant to gang stalking that I remain subject to, and this person is obsessed with spiritual abusing me. This person is obsessed with tormenting. This person is delusional with regard to engaging retaliatory acts, like I documented on video. I'm being monitored in the bathroom. The entity engaging the P.O.C. in the bathroom moments after I'm documenting this predator, Jason Isaac Fields, is directly relevant to the surveillance that I'm subject to on my devices, relevant to the surveillance that's underway by the entity that I then document on video in the specific environment. He is fully engaged in that pattern of conduct. It is state action, and it is relevant to the psychological component to what federal group stalking monitoring is, which is demonic activity. All right, this demon also engages in, while spiritually attacking me, interfering with and interrupting my sleep. This is a means whereby, again, a demonic spirit that would even welcome negative attention, because I under any other circumstances am even acknowledging this demon. Okay, this is a stalker, somebody stalking in the spirit, and somebody gang stalking in relevant position, and does things such as interference and interruption of my sleep while seeking what is nothing other than negative attention. This is a delusional psychopath. Okay. And this is somebody that, again, is engaging what is that psychological warfare, which is the spiritual component to federal group stalking and monitoring. And the entity is doing so with regard to the practicing of witchcraft, while this obsessed state actor who abused his position in government to target me and help high school graduates, okay, to acquire things fraudulently, while sharing an obsession with me sexually. Okay, this is incestuous, this is psychopathic, it is entirely perverted. It's based on the Jezebel spirit, the Pharaoh spirit that is using Jason Isaac Fields. This is somebody that is a threat to me while, again, suffering from these actual delusions. There will be no voluntary relationship. It would be, again, my having to be suicidal, which I am not. I love myself from the top of my head to the bottom of my feet. I love my nail beds. I love my pores. Okay, I would never do that, but it would require me to be suicidal. It would require a kidnapping and a rape for me to ever have any involvement with him. And as you're aware, that is no involvement. That is no relationship. Those are criminal acts committed against another person. Okay, this is somebody that is delusional and refuses to accept no as an answer, and is engaged in psychological warfare as a means of, again, a delusional means, because there will be no success. I will prosecute this gang stalker were he to ever come into my presence. Okay, the entity is engaging in what is delusional behaviors, which is speaking to the threat that that person poses. Okay, and this is, again, Jason Isaac Fields' conduct, which is ongoing pursuant to federal group stalking and monitoring as well. Right. Also the documentations regarding what I documented today on video. At 4:57, the video ends at 5:07 p.m. The increase in terrorism levels as this demon is documented, this demon who is delusional and is obsessed with actually harming me, and is deceived with regard to thinking that when you love someone, you're not harming them. When you love someone, you're not acting against their will. When you love someone, you are not doing violence toward them. And psychological warfare is exactly that: spiritual abuse, gang stalking, engaging what is sexual activity with one's relatives, all manner of what is under all circumstances a permanent disqualification, and the refusal to accept that is not love. This is delusional on all fronts. Okay, and I am documenting this because it needs to be known, first of all, that the spiritual realm is real, that the practice of witchcraft is not only real, but it's harmful to those that engage in it, especially when you do it against a child of God. So all the demonic spirits that Jason Isaac Fields has been tangoing, dancing with, those demonic spirits are literally disintegrating his mind as he is entertaining ideas and notions that will never happen with me. They will never happen. He will be nothing other than arrested and prosecuted, okay, under federal law, not state law, because this is upon federal group stalking and monitoring. All right, the entity is doing so with an ongoing disdain for what my rights are, and this is relevant to state action. The entity that's engaged in federal group stalking and monitoring is engaged in an ongoing campaign of spiritually attacking you, and then seeking to criminally defame that ordinary target individual that does not have the evidence that the government is engaged in this very criminal system, which is integral to the spiritual attacks that occur in the mind of that targeted individual who are ignorant about that spiritual attack, that how such spiritual attacks are executed, such as someone being told disparaging thoughts about yourself that don't originate. You don't think those things about yourself, but you're experiencing those intrusive thoughts about harming yourself. Those thoughts don't belong to you either. Thoughts about perhaps even harming other people, and you don't know why. Those are not thoughts that belong to you, and those are demons. Those are demons that are attacking your mind, and it's not mental illness in the way in which the propaganda that is pushed out in this country, where the entity abuses the medical practice with regard to facilitating this surveillance system that's underway in the U.S. Okay, it is relevant to the spiritual realm, which is, again, needs to be openly spoken about, and that's why I'm exposing it. But I'm also going to enforce my rights against it. All right, and this is somebody that is engaging in that, and the entity is doing so with regard to impunity, with regard to, again, this ongoing impunity with regard to disrespecting the rights of another person, in the same way that you're not going to engage in what is gang stalking someone and avoiding justice. You're not going to engage in what is spiritually attacking someone and achieve any sort of success with that person. This person is delusional insofar as he has cemented and solidified his permanent blockage from every aspect of my life. And I said it before, and I will say it again: anyone that is even associated with Jason Isaac Fields and whatever agency that enabled him to engage in domestic terrorism against myself, an American citizen, that never committed any crime, and there's no actual investigation when the entity is gang stalking via the ongoing facilitating acts of the federal government. There's no placing someone on a terrorist list and then engaging in gang stalking them by following them around in helicopters, by stalking them with impossible light activity, by stalking them with amplified audible activity, which is a demonic pattern of conduct, domestic terrorism, and psychological torture. That is not an investigation into any sort of alleged terrorist that's placed improperly for purposes of facilitating gang stalking. And this is just one scenario that I'm throwing out there, how the entity engages in the P.O.C. through the corrupt practices of the government. Even while the entity engages in what is abusing things such as maintaining terrorist lists, the entity is gang stalking under all circumstances. It is no legitimate investigation. They're engaging in the demonic P.O.C. All right. This is where the entity you will not avoid justice for that. And it is the same with regard to the spiritual warfare tactics. And I am documenting it because this is going to be material that supports terrorists like Jason Isaac Fields, who has had disgusting sex affairs with relatives of mine, and every person that I formerly associated with a friend. This is somebody that is sick in their mind. There will never be any relationship other than plaintiff and defendant where I will prosecute him if he ever comes into my presence. And I will prosecute the government that has enabled such a terrorist to have any sort of control over property that belongs to me that has still not been handed over to me. It is currently 7:29 p.m. on April 15, 2025. This is P.O.C.